a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast. Produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent. Featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Hello, Godzillavangelists. You may ask why we're not covering Godzilla -1 today, the new Godzilla hotness, and don't worry, we're going to get to it. It's not our fault, we were just submerged in a tidal wave of new Godzilla goodness.
Woo!
It was so much, in fact, that our entire bodies are aching. Our shoulders, our backs, and of course, our Shin Godzillas.
Oh my god. Ryan, have you been planning that one for years?
My
Ryan,
greatest cold opening ever.
as of 3 seconds ago, I was like, where is he going with this?
Same. I gotta respect that dad joke.
You landed it.
I learned from the best.
What, me?
Well, you've helped, but my own father. Well, of course, if this is your first episode, I'm Ryan, and here with me are my pals Sam and Joanna.
Hi.
Hello, Skrianka as usual.
Skrionk, as per usual.
And we've got a special guest today, Joanna's brother, Ron. Welcome.
My brother. More family on the pod.
More Brodecki. Can never have too many of us.
Hell yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, speaker at the upcoming Automate conference, am I right?
Yes, I will be. Anybody who's in the world of robotics and industrial automation, come to the McCormick Place in Chicago in May to hear all about partnerships and how they can bring you to solutions.
Yay. This is a lot of lead time, so everyone get your tickets now before they sell out.
Link included in whatever show notes.
We've had people from the world of film, video games, theater, and now the world of robotics.
Yeah.
Yay.
We're more robust every day.
Yes, but mind you all, I am a stupid marketing person. I am a mouth, not a brain when it comes to this. So I can program a really easy robot, but I can't tell you anything about how they actually work.
And of course, I have to ask you the question I ask every new guest. What's your previous Godzilla and giant monster experience leading up to today? What is your feeling about Godzilla?
Good feelings about Godzilla. I'll be honest, when I've never actually been a huge fan of the older films. So, don't shoot me over that one. But my kaiju days started off in the world of Power Rangers and then moved into anime. Joanna can attest to the anime geek that I was growing up.
Didn't you start the anime club at our high school?
Yes, I did start the anime club at our high school.
There we go, everybody. There we go.
So yeah, so I was a big fan of that kind of stuff. Godzilla never really hit too much other than, our dad was a huge fan growing up. So, I knew about him and all of that. But yeah, the kaiju stuff, had some stuff there, but I was never a huge specialist in it. But I guess the reason that I'm here is obviously because, in case Joanna hasn't mentioned it at some point, during however many episodes before, I lived in Japan for a while, including right at the time when Shin Godzilla came out. So I am, I loved that and I love what it brought back. So, now I got a little boy and I might be trying to get him into Godzilla at some point too. Today's
movie, as we've already mentioned, is Shin Godzilla. Sometimes called Godzilla Resurgence, its alternate title. It's a movie from 2016. And what's interesting is I saw it in its American release, limited release, when I was just starting to formulate the idea for this podcast. And I actually thought, oh, cool, we'll get to this, really soon. And just, here we are 7 years later.
I love that. Cool. Wow, I didn't think about it from that perspective, but that's crazy. Yeah, it was probably like within the year that we started, right?
We hadn't started yet, but
like within a little
the
bit
idea
of
was coming together.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. And now we've finally
Yeah.
made it.
And
Yeah,
by the
right.
time it's 2033 and we see Godzilla -1, you know,
I was gonna say, I'm glad you guys are taking the shit for each other on this one, because I was gonna say, it's like Shin Godzilla. How did it take you guys? You did a Shin Ultraman one earlier this year. You mentioned Shin Godzilla. The whole Shin series started with Shin Godzilla. You know?
yeah.
I know. We've talked about this movie in tangential connections so many times.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say you were waiting for me to be ready to be the guest for it.
That's correct.
And it
yeah.
took a minute.
Full credit.
And
for
based
this
on the
happening.
schedule, that's, yeah, exactly. So here we are.
Such a Christmas present to all of you that we're finally getting to it.
Wow, fuck, Rob, you're setting yourself up. You better be an amazing, this is a...
No, he's in marketing, so I'm not surprised.
There you go.
It's all mouth.
Perfect.
There's no brains or anything behind it. You know,
As is usually the case with these more recent movies, I don't know a ton about the production history, but I got some stories to share.
Hell yeah.
So, Toho had been musing about bringing back Godzilla for his 60th anniversary in 2014, but that project never got off the ground until the phenomenal box office response to the American Godzilla of the same year. And so they were like, oh, okay, I guess we better get serious about this now. And so producer Taiji Ueda would spearhead the effort, and he contracted the successful writer/director/animator Hideaki Anno to serve as director. Anno initially refused as he was dealing with a bout of depression at the time, but as he recovered, and his longtime friend and collaborator Shinji Higuchi, who we've talked about many times as well, approached him, and he was like, hey, I want to do this. Like, I'll help you with it. So between both of those things, Anno changed his mind, and he decided to go make this movie, which is a pretty big deal if you're an anime fan. Rob, were you on the Evangelion train early?
oh, I was definitely on the Evangelion. Maybe not early, but yeah, I was 90s. Anime was my jam, so definitely had some Evangelion fandom. And that was another thing too that I know, like, they, just for reference, they remade it, in the early 2010s or something. They updated it, and it got, again, huge promotion all throughout Japan during that time. So I think it was just a resurgence of kaiju and stuff like that at the time.
Yeah, and we did a mini-sode on Evangelion and Godzilla, and sort of the many connections between
Well,
them.
and this is a good time to announce our companion podcast to Godzillavangelists, Evangelists.
But yeah, there's so many Godzilla Evangelion connections, and in that episode we talked about how Anno was always a huge Godzilla nerd. Like in the 80s, he made basically like a kaiju Ultraman fan film, and so he was very intimidated by the prospect of doing this. So he was most influenced by the first film, for sure, but he decided to completely reboot the continuity so he could create a little bit of distance and not have to worry about following that up. And speaking of Evangelion connections, the score for this movie is almost entirely reused music from both previous Godzilla movies and Evangelion. There's only like a couple new tracks that were written for this, so
That's a cool
he played
factoid.
very hard into his
They were like, listen, guys, we got some cool rock jams that I know we could use. They transferred them for free.
I
And they
mean,
transferred them on. They said,
again,
rock on, let's go.
My image, when we talk about Godzilla movies, aka guy in rubber suit movies, I mean, isn't that the definition of low budget? So if you want to save budget, you definitely want to reuse the music.
Oh, they're always,
Mhm.
yeah, they're always rinsing and repeating.
Yeah, that's
It's,
the equivalent of putting the music in a rubber suit.
Okay. Sam,
I'm on a roll
give a
today,
big
guys.
question mark.
Sam,
to that one.
the other one gave you a 12 out of 10, but this one, we might have to lower your status a bit.
Listen, the average sits at a 7, and I'm all right with it.
Yeah, exactly. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so you might as well keep going.
I would love to be a 7 out of 10. I'll just say that.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm sitting in my 4 to 5 scale. I would love a 7.
Speaking of rubber suits, practical effects were used in a very limited capacity for this shoot, including a large animatronic of Godzilla's upper body, but the official line is that none of it is in the final cut, making this the first Japanese Godzilla movie to be entirely CG.
Wait.
For better or for worse.
What? He moves so much like a guy in a rubber suit.
It
completely
animated. Shocked right now. All right.
I don't want to show my hand too much, but that's my favorite thing about the movie is that they made a choice to make all the effects look like puppets and suits. So stiff and kind of rigid. When he's like a kind of like a snake chicken at the beginning, and he looks like a puppet. He's a puppet.
He is a snake chicken puppet, and a cute one at that.
Yeah, but it was definitely a choice to make it, even if it was CGI, to make it look again like it moved like a practical effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that with Shin Ultraman, and that was one of my favorite things about it, is that it was modern in its approach, but it still aesthetically felt like 60s effects. Yeah, and this is the same thing, although less extreme than it was in Shin Ultraman. That really felt like everything was in the 60s. That said, I'm not convinced that a couple practical shots weren't snuck in. There's one in particular where, near the final form Godzilla's first appearance, when he's coming through the trees, because I saw a behind the scenes picture of the animatronic, and it was that composition with the trees at the bottom of it, and there's one that really looks like it's a physical shot, but I have no evidence for that. That's just my stupid screwing.
Crazy conspiracies are the lifeblood of podcasts, so let's run with that one.
Well, even in the Godzilla series, the Godzilla vs. Kong, the conspiracy theory podcast.
What if our podcast was only Godzilla conspiracies? Oh, that would be so fun.
I feel like we'd have a terribly hard time coming up with enough material for a show that
we just riff.
Anyway, when the movie finally came out, it ended up being titled Shin Godzilla, which was chosen because of its ambiguity in Japanese. Shin, depending on the context, can mean new, true, reborn, or God, apparently. Personally, I like the alternate title of Godzilla Resurgence a little bit better. I don't think either title is great in English, but
I'll be honest, I always just read it as new, because Shin for me, I speak Japanese somewhat, and Shin to me I've always just used as new. That's always my first thought for it. So it's just like new Godzilla. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'll run with that.
But also for the resurgence, because they did kind of speak to him like they didn't have any ties to the past, right?
Right.
They spoke to him as if he was new.
This is the first Japanese Godzilla movie to completely wipe the slate clean. All of the previous ones at least had the continuity of the first 1954 movie carried on from. This is the very first one to totally reboot from scratch.
So interesting that they chose resurgence as the word, which is,
Yeah, because that implies previous
grammatically,
ones.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true. They both titles have their flaws.
Incorrect.
So Shin Godzilla is kind of like New Coke. New Godzilla, New Coke. Yeah, okay.
It'll be around forever. So
the movie did extremely well in Japan, which I'm hoping Rob could speak to in a minute.
I can.
And even its limited U.S. release was extended by a week due to high demand. It ended up making $78 million worldwide, which was a big return on its budget of about $10 million, which is $1 billion.
I also love that it was the 2014 movie that motivated everyone, because I know that for at least the 2014 movie we were a little bored by, but I'm glad that the masses drove up the viewership to lead to this one. Right? That was the one with that Aaron guy, that one guy that was the main character, but so boring.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, Rob, tell us about what it was like to be there or at release.
Honestly, and that when living in Japan at the time, I think actually resurgence is a good word for the cultural effect that it had there. Because so I moved to Japan in 2009, and I mean, like Japan, like Godzilla was a touch point. Like people knew, obviously know him, but it was old. It was, unless you were like a middle-aged or older geek, you didn't really, Godzilla didn't really mean much. I think honestly, the only places that I saw Godzilla stuff would be at like, a cafe from the, 60s or 50s, 70s style cafe or bar, or going to one of those used toy shops, that would have a whole, like the Godzilla toys in the bin. Like that was it for Godzilla, which always kind of shocked me at first, because it's like, what do people think of when, what do Americans think of when they think of Japan? Godzilla's generally in the top three, along with high tech, which is also not Japan. Fax machines are still alive and kicking over there.
Yeah, but they're so sleek and clean. They're amazing.
They're sexy fax machines.
Man, I don't even know. Do your viewership, are they old enough to know what a fax machine is? Do we have to go into a little history lesson?
I'd hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Over here, we're spitting facts.
So anyway, let me get off
I think we're good.
Let me get off my crotchety old man's chair here. But so honestly, it's like, okay, so the first 6 or 7 years that I lived in Japan, almost nothing with Godzilla. There was the Ultraman episode earlier that I was listening to. The city that I lived in had an Ultraman statue by one of the TV station offices over there. And we all had our picture in front of that, of course, with the Superman/Ultraman pose. But Godzilla wasn't much of anything. And then this movie came out and Godzilla was everywhere. Commercials, I think McDonald's had ties in. I think, it was everything, and everyone went to see it. It was a really popular movie again. And then the biggest thing that I actually remember about it, just to date the time, does anybody remember that Picotaro and the Pineapple Pen song?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how big that was in America, but in Japan, that was huge. Okay, Joe, you don't know? You don't know Picotaro and Pineapple?
I'll listen to it after this.
It is a glorious thing for those who don't.
It was a minor meme hit here, but yeah, I know it's super huge in Japan.
Yes, thank you to Justin Bieber for apparently sharing it. Yes, it was a minor hit, but it was huge in Japan. And so what happened is, like, at the end of the year, on New Year's Eve in Japan, they have this big, because for New Year's in Japan, it's basically like you go back home and you sit and relax, stay with your family, eat too much food. It's like, U.S. Thanksgiving, basically. But so on New Year's Eve, NHK, like the main Japanese TV channel, like the Japan's version of the BBC, they do this big music contest show. It's called like Kohaku something, which means like red versus white, basically. So you have the red team and the white team, and you have a whole big stuff there. And it was just Godzilla and Picotaro Pineapple Pen throughout the whole thing. And they constantly had like Godzilla clips opening the show, Godzilla clips through. I think at some point there was even like a Picotaro, the guy doing his pineapple pen song on the stage at the same time as Godzilla was doing something. Like there was a duet kind of thing almost. Like it was.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to try to find that.
Yeah, let me see if I can send it, Joanna. I'm definitely gonna send you the link at least to the pineapple stuff. But yeah, it got huge at that point. So I mean, Godzilla went from nothing to being a big touch point again, a big cultural thing. Now, I left Japan after 2017, so I think it kind of honestly went back to not much of anything, after that. I don't think, but then again, I see now that there's a new Japanese Godzilla film, there's -0. So, hey, maybe Godzilla is becoming popular again. I'll have to talk to the friends over there and get a review for how things are now.
I think that's what you'll find, because I know that after that, they opened the Godzilla Park, which has been successful.
With the zip line
Godzilla
one?
cafes. Yeah.
Oh, I want to do that so much. I want to do that zip line into Godzilla's mouth.
Me too. Man, that's on. If I've never been to Japan, but on my first trip, I gotta go there. Just.
And Ryan, that's how we'll get famous on TikTok. You just post that video of you ziplining into Godzilla's mouth, and that's when our TikTok presence will finally take off. For Godzilla
I think it'll only go viral if I fall off the zip line and die, but I'll try it. All right, well, shall we jump into the synopsis?
Yeah, thank you for that context, Rob. Always just fun to kind of hear how things are going. I feel like, or Ryan, like when your dad has spoken to when stuff came out that he was seeing, it's just always fun to hear kind of where things were at and, you know, what spurs some of the Godzilla love to grow bigger for that moment in time.
That's right. Godzilla is in our hearts, not our brains, so it's nice to know how he finds his way into our hearts over and over again.
Exactly. For the synopsis, Rob, too, it started once and now we always make sound effects, so no pressure to join in, but also don't be weirded out when it happens.
I used to teach kids, and I have kids of my own. Sound effects are just a fact of life in my life.
Par for the course. Okay, great. Okay, great.
Synopsis, sound effects at the ready. A series of strange and unsettling accidents in Tokyo Bay eventually reveal the presence of a giant creature. Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Randos Yaguchi presses for the cabinet to take swift action, but he is rebuked, and the Prime Minister takes a slow, pacifying approach to action. The creature comes on land and begins to mutate further, wreaking destruction and death. The Prime Minister...
I'm a puppet. Okay, sorry.
I'm a puppet.
The Prime Minister finally orders an attack, but it is aborted when pedestrians are spotted nearby.
I'm a pedestrian.
I'm just two slow pedestrians walking towards the monster.
Adorable old people
walking towards the monster.
Pushing the cart and carrying another old person or something on their back.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
the subsequent days. In the subsequent days, Yaguchi is permitted to form a special task force, which he purposely shapes in contrast to the bureaucracy he's come to hate. I need to say that word properly because I'm going to be saying it a lot.
Yeah. Bureaucracy. Yeah, it is a hard one.
The outsiders in the task force discover the creature, soon named Godzilla, has a radioactive presence, and U.S. envoy Kayoko Patterson arrives to discuss the problem with Yaguchi. Sympathetic, Patterson allows Yaguchi's team to look at secret materials from Goro Maki, a scientist who discovered a U.S. nuclear dump site off the coast of Japan and predicted Godzilla's birth. However, most of Maki's notes appear to be indecipherable.
So cryptic, his notes. All riddles.
I mean, that's how you get these conspiracies that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly, that's how you get the...
What does it mean? Godzilla returns to land, now much larger and more armored. The JSDF tries and fails to repel the creature, and then the U.S. Air Force has a turn. Their bunker buster bombs initially injure Godzilla, but it mutates a sort of radar sense in response. Godzilla then uses the radar and its nuclear heat beams to destroy all the planes and missiles attacking it.
Super crazy laser show.
Oh my god, I'm having flashbacks to the clubs.
Purple lights.
Noise was Jesus. That was every single song back in the club back in 2010. Oh, flashbacks.
It's the last time I've been in the club.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, that's the last time.
I tried to do it again before I left Japan, and I was at 3 a.m. drinking a Chuhai, which is a lovely cocktail, a canned cocktail, outside of in a park in Japan, and just like, what am I trying to do these days? That was me in 2017, trying to go to the club.
That's when Rob knew he had to leave Japan.
Basically.
It's time to go.
Back to the base.
Wow. His attack also destroys huge portions of the city, in a helicopter carrying most critical figures of the Japanese government. Exhausted of energy, Godzilla goes into hibernation in the center of Tokyo.
Good night.
Powered down. Yaguchi and his team struggle to work with the interim government and increasingly intrusive U.S. interests. While working with a U.S. research team, they discover that Godzilla is constantly evolving and will be able to reproduce asexually. The UN then petitions for a mass evacuation and nuclear strike on Japan to wipe out the monster.
Wild.
Meanwhile, Yaguchi's team realizes that Maki's notes were meant to be folded like origami,
Of course.
giving them
God,
the
it's so
information
simple.
they need.
Obviously, how did we not see it? They were supposed to be folded like a crane.
I mean, as if it wasn't obvious enough that this was the first Japanese movie of Godzilla in, decades. Let's put the origami in there, just so you know
I love
it's
it.
Japanese.
I loved it.
Have we considered that we've been reading the Bill of Rights wrong this whole time?
We should try it.
We've been reading it
It's
flat.
it's like the Mad Magazine fold-in.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Topical at this point.
Yeah. The problem is we were supposed to fold in between, Amendment 1 and Amendment 3. Like, that's the folded part.
Right.
Yeah, the second one was a joke.
Tell my mother.
Please wait. Oh, I'll already be there by the time that you get there, Joe. Please wait and do it in person. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Anyhow, these notes give Yaguchi's team the information they need to come up with a plan. They begin creating a blood coagulant designed to overcool Godzilla and freeze it. Yaguchi presses Patterson and his friend Akasaka for more time and approval from the interim government. Eventually, the freezing plan goes into action just in time. Using unarmed drones and trains, the JSDF distracts Godzilla long enough to supply the coagulant to the monster and freeze it in
Beep, beep,
place.
beep. Back up these little tiny construction toys. Beep, beep.
Right. Next, you're going to tell me that those Tinker toys were
Yeah.
digital instead and not Tomica cars.
They had like Tinker toys and fishing poles.
I'm betting you that I know. Hey, the Japanese version of Hot Wheels are pretty high quality, So I'm betting you they just went to the Tomica store and picked up a few of the carts from there
Threw
for
them
that.
in. I loved that moment.
As long as we're diving into that, I love that plan because I love any plan that involves giving monsters juice. This was really just one step away from that.
Well, I mean, it's basically get it drunk and then prank it at this point. It's like.
Yeah, we've discussed this years ago, but Ryan likes when the military and government act as though they are run by a 7-year-old child, and their plans are, let's get a bunch of little cranes in there and do a little, play a little like dentist game with Godzilla and force him to drink juice.
And it worked.
And it worked.
It's only stupid if it works. If it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. So
Exactly right.
Might have to fight you on that. But okay, Ryan, we'll let you wrap up the film officially.
Oh no, that's all I had to say. I know there's a little more at the end there, but I found it hard to concisely write it in a synopsis, so we'll get to it later.
Okay.
So let's talk about the characters. I know they say this almost every time, but the characters such as they are. So we'll start with Yaguchi, who's kind of the only character in some ways.
Kind of the only character. Yeah.
Whoa, okay. I'm just going to come out and say right now, actually, okay, there's at least 2 characters. Okay, Yaguchi and Patterson. All right, because she's the one that sticks in my mind 7 years later after seeing the movie.
That's true. We've got 2 of them. I guess I just wanted to forget about her because of her terrible English acting.
Oh, which? Do you want to go to that one now? I got thoughts on that one.
Sure. We're talking characters.
So that's the one that sticks with me for 2 reasons. A, I was an American living in Japan. She was supposed to be playing a typical American, to which I just thought was incredibly obnoxious. And then I thought, wait, does that mean that for the last 7 years that I've been living here, I've just been incredibly obnoxious? The answer to which was most likely yes. But
Rob, you only came to that realization 7 years in. Oh no.
I mean, I had inklings. But then the other thing is you mentioned
I love when she goes, where's Zara? I was like, this is amazing writing.
well, so
I love it.
It's good that you mentioned Zara now because I'm going to bring up my wife who loves Zara at the moment. But no, so, okay, my wife is Japanese, as I'm sure Joanna has dropped, in the past. So we watched a lot of movies together. And a lot of times you'll have a movie or a TV show or whatever where they have, a Japanese character. I'm doing air quotes. I can't do video anymore, so I'm doing air quotes, And, she would comment a lot of times. It's like, that person's not Japanese. That person's not Japanese.
Right.
Like,
right.
She just knows, like, the same idea that, okay, they clearly just learned enough English for this role, or they just learned enough Japanese for this role, or English in this case. And so it was just to me like, she's supposed to be fluent in English and everything. And again, to most Japanese people, sure, fine. She probably is. Just like every American movie that has a Chinese or a Korean person playing a Japanese person and they just learned enough phrases. It's like, oh, now I get it. That's when that clicked too. So two things clicked for me thanks to her. And and that was, and so now every now and then I watch a movie since then, and every time there's a Japanese character, I really listen. It's like, do they really speak it? Are they really Japanese, or is it just the Korean American guy who they taught enough Japanese to for this role?
Right.
Very true. I had a friend who his family was from Germany, and every time someone was speaking German in a movie, he would very obnoxiously complain about it. So eventually I just started trying to look up if the movie had any German in it, so that I didn't have to deal with that.
This is not...
What, you mean you didn't have a sense of humor about that?
The Germans famously known for their sense of humor.
He thought he was being funny.
He thought it was being funny.
But that's, I think...
Yeah, she in general, though, was just so...
But
yeah, but I honestly I feel like complaining about the characters in this movie to an extent is missing the point, because they're all really supposed to be like walking metaphors. They're not really like going through arcs, because this movie is clearly not going for like a character development.
It's a
piece.
Godzilla
It's all
movie.
very...
Godzilla is the central of this one, I felt,
This
And
one
it's
even
very...
more so, though, I'd say. This
Yeah.
one is especially like almost deliberately. All they talk about is the plot. We don't know what they're
we don't know
anything else about
backstory on
them.
anyone. Yeah.
It's an extremely political movie, which is going to limit... Rob will probably actually understand it a bit more than we do, but I've always felt like a little bit of distance because I can't completely understand the cultural context. Like, I know I've heard legends of how the scene of the helicopter with all the politicians exploding would get huge applause and laughter in Japan, which I can kind of wrap my head around, but like I'll never fully understand.
I will believe that. And so just a little background on it, like the same party. So Japan is a democracy and has been since the 50s or whenever the U.S. officially gave up occupying it, if you will. But it's been the same party in power from the beginning until I think they might still be in power, except for like 2010. The opposition party finally got power and then it went away. But they honestly, before this movie was made, was it Shinzo Abe, who, you probably seen, he was the guy who came out of the Mario pipe to take the ball, the Olympic, torch or whatever before it was going to Japan at the closing ceremony of the 2016 ones probably. But before him, they had like a new prime minister every 6 to 9 months. So
wow.
And just like generally people were just like very meh on politics over there. So I could just see a lot of people being fed up with stuff and being glad to be gone. And if you're talking bureaucracy, Japan does bureaucracy well. That I'll leave that at that, because that could go on a whole another 20-minute tangent there.
Don't worry, there'll be plenty more opportunities to talk about it, because where I can connect to this movie is it's very much about the frustration of being a younger, unheard person in a stratified society. Like Yaguchi is the viewpoint of, I'm not a kid anymore. I have a viewpoint and I have an understanding of this world and I want to make it better. But there's so much just stratification in the way, preventing him from really making a difference.
And that is Japan in a nutshell. Nothing, your experience, etc., everything doesn't matter. It's all based around how long have you been at that company or in politics or whatever. It's just, everything is just how long have you been in it and how old are you compared to. So definitely.
Yeah, there was such a focus on what will be your role in the government after this, and then on her and like when I'm president. There was such and she's like, when I'm president by 40, and I was like, dang, dream big. Maybe add 40 more years to but that's helpful context to add to know that timing is even greater.
Yeah. And then, of course, Kyoko Patterson is standing in for, overbearing U.S. interests. But in a somewhat more sympathetic light, I guess. It's almost racist, the point the movie is making, where she's like, I'm American, but because I have Japanese blood, I'm like honor bound to
super qualified.
respect Japan. It's not quite that, so it doesn't quite cross into like racist territory, but it comes close.
I do just have to give her props as being one of two women in the film. I was shocked. I was like, this is 2016, and there are two women in the film.
Again, not surprising having been in Japan. Japan is like 20 years behind. And if you look at look at how bad America is in terms of, having women in positions of power.
Representation.
Japan is so much worse.
I really thought when they brought in the female scientist, I thought, because it was maybe 12 minutes, I think the whole first 40 minutes of the movie, I kept going, oh, now this is the character they're really going to focus on. So when they introed that female scientist, I was like, oh, we're going to learn about her. She's the hero. And no, she wasn't. And then when they introed the scientist who was then dead, before I knew he was dead, with the secret origami map, I was like, oh, now we're going to go visit him at his house. He's going to be the main character. I just couldn't grasp.
The way this movie starts is so disorienting if you don't know what you're getting into. I know we're hitting a lot of tough things about Shin Godzilla. I really do like it, to sort of spoil it. But there's such a big barrier to entry. It's not a easy first watch as an American.
Well, yeah, that's actually, I'll say, just now that we're saying what we think, just because I think it's interesting. I don't want to be overly negative, but it really didn't work for me. Really didn't. So, and some of it is, there's certainly some barrier to entry as an American. There's just translation stuff, but there's also just, it's the kind of stuff that I just don't respond to, and in American or Japanese movies, but yeah, I mean that I'm just gonna say I find the choice similar to Shin Ultraman. Actually, it's almost the same, all the same stuff I felt in that I felt in this. I just find the choices of directing and editing to be so confoundingly frustrating, as and to me, not even I think it's doing a manga kind of thing. I think a lot of that, I want to I'm trying to identify it. It's doing a manga kind of thing where there's this rhythm of you see who's saying stuff when they say it, but it makes it so hard for me to feel this guy who I know that everyone's saying he's this young guy who's going up against bureaucracy, but it's so doesn't show it to us. There's never a time where someone is saying something bureaucratic and we get him responding to it, and beyond just them saying their line on their face, him saying it on his face, and kind of and always going to these wide shots, and it just so to me it's hard to get into, but there are some style choices that I think make it even more difficult to get into, and for me they don't work. But that's me, and I'm most people love it, so I'm who am I? Could just not be for me.
I think I felt too that, I mean, the editing piece of, yes, they say the line and so the camera's on them. I felt too, because there was so many scenes, like it was like 36 minutes in when they introed who, again, I thought was going to be the lead, the professor who was actually then dead and never appeared in the film. But up to that point, 36 minutes into the movie, it was like basically all talking in boardrooms. And I get that they're setting up this idea of bureaucracy. But yeah, I felt like I was like, are they directing and editing it this way so it feels like there's like this movement happening when it's just these scenes and scenes and scenes and scenes of people talking and making decisions about bureaucratic planning. And then I loved their choice, though, to pivot it of, I feel like it was a little more straight close-ups when it was like the government. And then when it was like the ragtag group of, volunteers getting together, help out, all their close-ups would be like a little shaky on them. I don't know. It just added to some kind of...
So...
I don't know what vibe it added, but it added to it.
I'm impressed you picked up on that, because I couldn't tell you why anything was shot the way it was ever. And again, I'm just going back to my Shin Ultraman points, and like maybe I just have a problem with the Shins, the indie band that everyone likes, but
right, exactly.
No, I actually like the Shins, all right, the band, but the movies I got a problem with.
I like how you had to clarify that. You just couldn't let it pass.
I'm afraid of offending any music fans of the Shins on this Godzilla podcast where I'm
come and kick you in the shins. They got
that's what I'm afraid of.
Roots, right? The Shins are a punk band.
That's right.
So steel toed shin kicking. That's not going to be fun.
I that would be amazing if they were a punk band. I thought they were like a very sensitive indie band. That's what I'm picturing. But honestly, they have even sharper boots. They have spurs on the front. Anyway, I know it's intentional, but that's the kind of stuff that bumps me a little bit. And so I kind of, the other thing is I think it's a writing choice. And again, it's probably a little bit manga, it's a little bit anime, but there really isn't any subtext. Everyone's just basically saying what they're, every scene is people saying what they think and what they mean. There's not a lot of like, no one's ever like putting up red tape in a way where it's actually about something different. They're saying, hey, you can't do this because of these reasons. And we go, oh no, this is because this is actually about blank. It's like, no, it's about what they're saying. It's, yeah.
Now that'll dispute. I think there's a lot of dryly funny stuff, especially in the first half of the movie, where like you get indications of how rule-based and ridiculous and slow this decision-making process is. Like when they're like looking at the initial Godzilla reports in like the room with all the floral chairs.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, now let's move to the main conference room. And all the same people stand up and go to a different room. So just so they can have minutes on it. I laugh every time at that.
Full honesty, I lived in Japan at the time, but because if I went to the theater, it would not have had subtitles on it, and my Japanese is not that good. I did not see it in the movie theater. I saw it on the airplane. I saw it on the airplane in 2017 while I was flying back to the U.S., which maybe put me in the mindset because I wasn't in a total, let's analyze this, and I don't have the big theater background like you guys, so I was just like, and it's a movie. Good. But now that you kind of talk about like the first 36 minutes is just people talking in boardrooms and moving from one boardroom to the other, all of the exact same people, just because they had some process thing where they needed to take care of it and they could record it. Oh my God, that to me, I would almost say that was a stylistic choice, because if you want to talk about Japanese bureaucracy, that's a description of it right there. Like it is just, you're going to, everything is a process that has to be followed to the rule, to the T, to the, everything has to be perfectly followed to the rule. There is no deviating from the process at all. All right, it all must be perfectly done or you start over again. And everything is go here and do this. Go here and do this. Now go here and do this. Now go back to this person that you saw and do this. Now go back and do this. And 3 to 4 hours later, you're out of the town hall or whatever it is to get what you needed to do. So if we're trying to say that this movie is a statement on bureaucracy, and I would almost say that if you guys hated that first 36 minutes because it was just mindless people talking to you or whatever in one boardroom after the other, success by the creative team.
To be fair, that's not my issue. Is actually, I mean, that was very clear. I did like the let's go to a different boardroom moment, and I think it's more the just the execute. It's just the storytelling of a lot of this that I found tough for me. But I was going to actually say one thing I did also like, and I wanted to give a shout out. Although again, I like the idea of it. I almost maybe wish it was done differently, but when we keep getting those same group of guys walking different blue hallways, it really reminded me. Yeah, it's very funny, and it really reminded me of, I don't know if anyone have seen the early 80s movie The Right Stuff, but it's it's about like the kind of the space race, and every time a big development happens, we keep cutting back to like a very sweaty, like tired intern at the White House, like or not the White House, but like at the Pentagon, I think, like running down a hallway the same way, like very like hurriedly to bring the report to like all the suits in a room. And so you have these beautiful monumental, like, you know, rocket launch or someone breaking the sound barrier, and then it just cut to this same kid just like running, panting down this hallway, and it's like, it's so funny and so good. It says everything that you need to say. And so there are things like that I think do certainly communicate, you know, very well, and definitely got the idea across. I think it was more just it kind of wore on me, I think, as it went.
Yeah. Like some of the cuts worked for like the, you know, cut. He's doing the press conference and he's like, "It will not come ashore," and then it just cuts to it coming ashore. You know.
Yes.
But
But like if I had $1 for every time they cut to a wide shot in the middle of someone talking just for no reason, there was just no new information there, I'd have, you know, like hundreds of dollars.
He'd be rich.
Yeah, I think your connection to anime is astute, because that's, of course, where Anno and Higuchi came from. They did make film projects on their own, but their first successes were in anime. And I know that his approach is very divisive. You know, a lot of people do hail those movies and series as brilliant and find a lot to love in them. But there's also a lot of people who just don't understand why he makes the decisions he does. So you're not alone on that. Just wanted to give you that voice of support.
I'm glad to hear there are other people like me who are right.
You motherfucker, you make me regret it instantly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's like, it's okay, Sam, and then he's like,
no. And I really want to, like, to be fair, anime, manga, these are, you know, like I've never seen Evangelion. I know these are a lot of things that are also just aren't things I'm familiar with, and aren't things that are really my cup of tea. So I'm kind of like, that's why I didn't want to approach this coming in hot with just like, I hated this, because it's like I kind of recognize that people really like this, and I have some positive things to say about it too. But I just, you know, you're asking what we as you know, fresh Godzilla eyes, you know, think of this, and for me, with the, you know, aside from a couple of big picture things and the visual effects approach, I'd say it's very largely just not for Sam. Not for old Sammy.
Yeah.
Not for Sam. Yeah, I appreciate that I'm going to go, not for Joe. I'm going to just use that from now on, whenever I need to.
It's funny. I didn't know what to expect with Sam, but I, like, 40 minutes into the movie, I was like, you know what? This is a lot like Gamera 2. And I remembered your reaction to Gamera 2, Joanna, and I was like, she's not going to like this. I have it in my notes.
It picked up, well, yeah. Then, I mean, are there, I don't want to, I know we, like, kind of derailed on the characters, but are there any other character highlights that anyone wants to mention?
And I do like the sort of mini arc with the placeholder prime minister, where he's just like the oldest guy yet, and he's from agriculture. Like, he's clearly not equipped to lead, and you get, like, you're immediately worried because in his first scene, like, after he's become prime minister, he's complaining about his noodles getting soggy.
Oh my god. And then they cut to all the young people who are like, they said something like, some guy was like, "And we get warm meal," you know what I mean? And they're like getting eating like ramen out of a plastic bowl. But yeah.
I just wanted to say,
but eventually he does step up, and he's kind of an okay leader.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say?
I was just about to reference something that happened in the movie, and I was like, "Oh my god, that part where they get all the cans of meat," and then I realized that no, in fact, that was not from this movie, and it was from the Miyazaki movie that I watched last night. And just like the new one, but I like literally was like I pictured it with these characters, just just that was terrible. I'm so glad I didn't say it, but then I needed to share it because yes, I can use this and the animated film I saw in a theater, and thought they were the same movie.
Sam's trying to improve this movie in his head for himself.
If this movie took the turn that The Boy and the Heron took, whoa boy, that would be pretty. That would be for Sam.
I can't respond to that because I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, it is very like clinical and sterile for the most part. But if you can find a point of entry, like a place where you connect to it, like for me, it was the metaphor of it all. And so when the goal became to finish the plan before another nuke is dropped on Japan, it kind of works. It becomes a little bit poignant and effective. Like, I'm like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. That's like, just feels like a horrible, disgusting thing. And you're rooting for them to finish before that.
I agree. It picked up in the last hour.
I'm just trying to explain where I could attach to this, I guess.
Like, can you bring that up, like the nuclear bomb thing? And I think that is, it is obviously any Godzilla movie is, in Japan is probably, that's going to be part of the play. And it should, like, because just a few years before this one, there was the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, and the Fukushima, nuclear disaster was still fresh, at this point. And then I remember like 2016, even, I think it was, Obama took a trip to Japan, and he went to the Hiroshima, the Peace Park, to give a speech there. And the big thing on the news about it was A, he was doing it, and then B, it was kind of scandalous because, Obama, part of the presidential detail is the nuclear football. Like, there's always a guy walking with Obama, not far from him. And there was like a scandal around, like, they're bringing that into the Peace Park, the memorial for the place where the nuclear bomb was dropped, but the place where the bomb was dropped. Like, so it was a huge kind of deal there. So I think bringing that's always a pretty strong undercurrent on it. Like, even when I was there, like, again, like, I had some older students who definitely had some stronger feelings about all of that stuff from the war and whatnot. But I definitely had some, people, a lot of people still had very strong opinions, about being anti-nuclear bombs and stuff like that. So obviously playing that element into it is going to be huge.
I think too, I think it was a scene between Akasaka and Yaguchi kind of in this like phase when it was like, this has been decided, this is what's happening, and he's trying to fight for it not to happen. I thought then is really when those two characters kind of solidified for me and why I said I liked Akasaka overall as a character. But I think when they were having that conversation and said post-war Japan is a tributary state, and then one of them said post-war extends forever, I feel like that was a very, like, that statement resonated strongly. And yeah, I think that just that's when the movie kind of like dropped in much more for me.
Yeah, and that's a good observation, because Anno definitely talks about how he was so frustrated and upset at the government response to the earthquake, tsunami, nuclear disaster, and how slow and inefficient it was at first. And you could definitely feel that inspiration and how he sort of drove this all out. But yeah, and what you said about Obama visit is also a good point, because I don't think most Americans, including myself, would even blink or think about that. But there is just, so it's very interesting to hear about such a sensitivity that even that minor thing of him just passing through with the nuclear football was a minor controversy.
Yeah.
Kind of a character here is Godzilla, of course. I'd love to talk about Godzilla's depiction, because it really is as divergent as good old Gino, the American 98 movie. It is about as different
Right,
from
except
the standard Godzilla as that one is.
except where that one was G no, this one was G yes. Because everyone likes this one.
Well, let's talk about his first iteration. When he showed up, I was like, what is this kooky guy doing on the town? Why does he have these little wobbly eyes that I use on a little craft project in preschool? He looked so silly. But I loved when he, whenever they throw those kind of like really dark scenes of like a child putting on a helmet and a family packing up to leave the apartment building, and then Godzilla just like slurps over the whole building with his little puppety self. I thought that was a very cool action he was doing, but again, sucks for the family.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say my favorite thing about the movie is it's the choice of depiction of Godzilla, the design of him, the way his mouth opens, the way he's animated to seem like kind of like practical and not quote unquote realistic, but almost in a weird way. I think it helps the CGI age better because it's rather than depicting something that is totally real, it's depicting something that feels like an imitation of real or something. So I think it actually, I mean, to its credit, we were confused as to how much of it was practical and not. But that's my favorite thing, and it's not just technical, in terms of how good was the rendering of Godzilla, but it's also just like there are a lot of very clever choices they had to make in terms of design and just how to actually do it and to come up with those ideas. So I think that's for me, favorite thing about the movie was actually the Godzilla kind of depiction.
Yeah, I feel too like when he opened his mouth, all the red kind of whatever we want to call them strings they were setting up, and how when he was in that first form and kind of shimmering along, all of it was like dropping from him. It was so gross and very. My worst nightmare is actually in the first 5 minutes of the movie when that tunnel collapses with just red coming through. My worst nightmare living in New York is that one day I'm going to be stuck in traffic in the Holland Tunnel trying to get to my least favorite airport in Newark, and the water's just going to come in and take the tunnel over, and that'll be the end of me. So
I have that fear too when I'm stuck in a tunnel. I'm like, it's going to collapse this time. But yeah, I wasn't sure how to feel at first, but I got on board with it as the movie went on. And I realized, like, oh, okay, what he's going for is Godzilla is not even really an animal in this one. It's a machine. And that's why I call Godzilla an it in this one instead of a he, because there's nothing behind those beady eyes. There's just nothing. Built for death and destruction. And like you said, from the gills is dropping blood. It's like literally leaving a trail of blood wherever it goes. And when they describe how he gets energy from basically like nuclear reacting oxygen and water, I was like, that makes sense. That's not an animal. It doesn't need to eat. It's just a walking nuclear reactor that just wants to wipe everything out. And I'm like, okay, I can get on board with this. It is super different from your typical Godzilla.
Well, it kind of makes that may. I mean, I was kind of already thinking about the nuclear plant thing, and I think that's a clear connection to that as well. He's representing something, representing something a little different in this, and so that was probably a choice to make it be more like the nuclear plant disaster rather than man versus nature or specifically the atomic bomb this time.
I think even though saying like that, it wants to destroy thing, like you're kind of almost giving it too much personification or, agency at that point. Like never took it as this is Godzilla. It wants to do something. It's kind of, okay, it's a machine, but it's also just like a beast. Like it's not necessarily targeting and saying like, I want to destroy Tokyo and I want to destroy these things. It's just, it's in its way, which again if we want to no idea if this is what he meant, but if we want to talk about like, the Fukushima disaster, what preceded that was a giant earthquake and a tidal wave. And again, those are not machines, those are not feeling things, they're just occurrences that cause destruction.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And then, of course, we get the very cool nuclear heat ray in this one. It's just, it's not just coming out of his mouth.
It's
coming out everywhere.
Man, that was just awesome.
That was epic when it, again, our rave moment. And also, when it just took over the whole city. That was cool.
It's just cool.
It's cool. I like that.
It's cool.
The beam coming out of his mouth, is like a butane lighter, where it sort of feels like it lights like just after it's exited his mouth. You know what I mean? Like the beam doesn't go all the way back into his throat, which is just fun. I can't explain it, but I like it. It delights me.
Yeah, and I've never quite seen the heat breath fully take over like that. Like, I feel like it's usually pointed. And this was just heat breath, and then, party time on his back. Those pilots coming in really thought they were fooling him.
Well, it's also...
I'm going to call that scene from now on as
party
just
time.
Party time.
Party time.
Beep, 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 beep. The beams... the beams don't... Like in previous movies, his heat breath, he breathes it at a building and it blows up the building. It hits the building and knocks it over or whatever. In this one, it's like they just extend infinitely, and anything in the middle is just getting cut through like butter. Like they just kind of they just sort of seem to laser through everything and slice them. And I imagine those beams don't actually end.
Exactly.
They just wrap around the earth.
Yes. And him in that form too. I was like, okay, well, if they had kept him in when the original form showed up, I was like, is this the dude the whole movie? And I was like, all right.
I would have been happy.
But, it would have been such a silly but funny film. When he showed up in that final form, though, like, his hands were so gross and creepy. They were just like kind of little, but so gaggly, and nails. And I feel like that creeped me out. And the ending shot when
I was just gonna come around to that.
When they zoom in on his tail, was that dead body? Like, what was happening there? Was that his tail? What happened at the end?
This is the ending.
The tip of the tail. This is the very ending.
Was that him asexually reproducing little men?
That, I believe, is supposed to be the implication. That's what everyone's taking away, and that's the one thing that's a bridge too far for me. That just takes it away from Godzilla and into something else. So
that
I prefer
makes me feel like Game of Thrones White Walkers. Yeah, those little dead bodies.
That was a dozen little minyas. How can you not like it? Little spiny minyas that were a little more humanoid.
I think it didn't fully work for me because it's like that wasn't ever introduced at all, and we saw close-ups of him. So for them to all of a sudden be like, and his tail, dead.
Now, I'm just gonna throw devil's advocate and let's get really whatever on this one. So okay, Godzilla evolves repeatedly throughout this movie, right? And the idea is Godzilla is just a walking piece of destruction.
All
right. So okay, if he's a perfect tool, what is the ultimate perfect tool of destruction on this planet? Man.
Humans.
Right?
Oh,
Fukushima,
shit.
like an earthquake is an earthquake and a tidal wave is a tidal wave. But if there's not people having put a nuclear reactor on the coastline, it's going to cause problems, but it's not going to cause that level of problem, So, who is the ultimate weapon of destruction here? Man, bringing it back to the nuclear bomb. And again,
I like
was just
that.
gonna say,
I'm just pulling that one out of my ass right now, to be honest.
I think that may not be what the filmmakers were thinking. To be fair, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think that's far off, because I don't mind this ending allegorically. I just don't like the idea of, and here's Shin Godzilla 2, where there's like a bunch of like 8 foot tall, like Godzilla the human hybrids walking around. That movie, the movie where there's 8 foot Godzilla man hybrids walking around killing people, I hate that movie. So just like even
Ryan,
the idea of it, I can't stand.
You don't know. I'm writing it right now, and you don't know just how good it's gonna be. Okay, so hold your tongue.
Yeah, there hasn't been a Shin Godzilla 2, right? I think it's just been Shin Godzilla. Yeah.
Are there plans to be?
There was initially discussion because it was such a huge hit, but a few years ago they officially said, no, we're not doing a sequel. And so we ended up with Godzilla -1, which is another total reboot instead.
Oh, so it's not a sequel to Shin Godzilla.
It's set like before,
so
it's set in like the 40s or like right after the war, I think. So it's set even before the original. So hence why it's -0. It's before then.
I see.
Yeah.
Because I was going to make a joke about Shin Godzilla is not Godzilla -1 because it's not. So I can't say it. So why would I bring it up?
It's not. Why would you?
I've never
Wasn't mention it at all.
And that Sam seems to think of something and say, "Oh, I'm not going to bring that up," and then he brings it up. That's been like the third or fourth or fifth time that's happened.
Because he just still has to know how the joke will land. It's important to always just know, if, in case it would really land, you just want to test it.
Hey,
it's the buckshot approach.
And once it lands, you got to know that you could take that back in and use it in so many other conversations from here.
Yeah, you never know. You never know when a Godzilla -1 might come up in conversation.
You gotta be ready for that joke if you're gonna land it.
Brogan, I'm so sorry. Thank you for cutting out. I mean, for the listeners, I think he probably has to cut out like 80% of these.
No, they stay.
This episode is only going to be 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
They stay, and then after each episode, everyone votes on where Sam fell on the out of 10 scale for the jokes. You know, if he landed that 7.
There's your social
Sam
media
joke
action
-1
right there.
Sam joke -1.
There's your social media plug in there. Just play that in afterwards. Which one of Sam's terrible jokes hit the best? A, B, C. Boom.
I think between me disliking Shin Godzilla and making these jokes, I might be voted off the podcast by the fans.
Yeah, we'll see how many virtual tomatoes you're pelted by. I hate to end on anticlimactic, but my final thought is, maybe you guys could come up with a better one, but my final thought is, when I first saw this and I saw like the weird like first stage Godzilla with the wobbly gills like struggling to walk on land, I was like, oh, this is the baby, and then they're gonna like kill it and that's gonna make Godzilla mad or something like that. I was so sure that wasn't the Godzilla, and then it was, which I found amusing.
Were you sad that it was, or were you like, all right? Because the
No,
evolving was kind of cool.
That's why I said I was thrown off at first.
Right.
Like, the first half of this movie, I'm like, this is strange. Like, I think they took it too far. But then once it got to the final stage and they started talking about those machine-like aspects, it clicked for me.
And it made
was
sense.
Okay, I get it. It's like a coherent idea.
Now, speaking again of what you said, anticlimactic, what are your guys' thoughts on the poor people who had to drive those little trucks back up into his mouth, and B, is him just kind of freezing, like a little, like, again, I liked the idea behind it, the science of it, from my limited perspective, said, yep, checks out. And I liked that it was sciencey without having to get, too barreled down in the weeds of it. But I do feel like, just objectively, of all the ways to, end the problem they're having of Godzilla, it had all this, purple rays and then was like a tiny bit slow. But what do you think? That was a long-winded way of like, what'd you think of the ending? Rambling.
Okay,
as I said before, it works decently well for me. I don't mind that it's a wacky idea. I'm on board for wacky ideas. And it, again, allegorically, it's strong. It's like putting out the out of control nuclear reactions in a nuclear power plant. But I get what you're saying. It is bizarre.
That's, I think, maybe the word for it. Yes, we're used to either monsters fighting or monsters blowing up, and I understand what they're doing, placing it, obviously, so very differently from dropping an atomic bomb. But yeah, it's just like a little bit of a bizarre ending. Like, you're suddenly like, right, that's right. Okay, now we're at the end. Right.
Can we, I don't know, can we hit it towards, again, I don't know if he's going for it, but again, it just makes sense looking at the Fukushima disaster thing. How do you stop a nuclear reactor? You're basically spraying a lot of stuff on it to cool it down and reverse the reaction that's going on in there, which is basically what, Godzilla was in this sense. They sprayed a coagulant or coolant on it until it cooled down and stopped. And then it's just there.
Right.
And yeah,
well, and using significantly less violence.
Yeah. And then it's like the other thing, I didn't remember this from watching it, but I would, reading synopsises, it said like one of the things was like, oh, the isotope has a very short lifespan, so people will be able to move back within like 20 days. Considering it's a big, giant radioactive thing, you would think, oh, it's leaving radioactive traces everywhere. Well, that land's going to be dead for the next, millennia. But it's, again, the Fukushima thing, one of the big things, because generally Japan does cleanups after disasters very well, very quickly. But the Fukushima thing obviously dragged on, and people were displaced out of their homes for years. And, just before I started, I moved back to the U.S., they were just starting to move people back into that area. And there was a lot of questions about it and stuff, and what do you do with all of that waste? So maybe it might be anticlimactic, but it's done. You can move back. It's done. There was this big thing, this big disaster, but it's finished. We were able to solve it, and we go on. So, bureaucracy sucks, and the real world situation sucks, but we did it in this Godzilla movie. Go team.
Yeah. And that did put a more climactic thought in my head, actually, which is that the ending is this weird mix of being ominous and very optimistic. Like there's the famous meme where it says Hideaki Anno's art, and it's all twisted and blood and disturbing in his viewpoint, and it's unicorns and rainbows, and then it has Miyazaki on the other side, and it's flipped, where he has beautiful artwork and is the most dire outlook on humanity. But yeah, it that's one other thing I like. It's almost like a connection to when Honda was making the earlier Godzilla movies, the Shiro Honda, and he actually cared about what he was doing. He put in a lot of ideas about the brotherhood of man, about how he hoped the world could learn from World War II and work together and avoid war and nuclear conflict going forward. And that kind of optimism is here too. Like there's this thing about the French ambassador,
right, and sharing the data.
Japan wartime. That's like a huge thing to go toe to toe with the UN and be like, no, you got to stop. And there's a bunch of other things that just seem like overly convenient. But if you're following that brotherhood of man thread, that like when people at the end of the day really want to help each other, it can all come together. And it feels a little naive, but I think it's the perfect amount of sweetness to counter just how like depressing the rest of it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all. I think again too. Sometimes when I just frontline look, made in 2016, big movie, I just assume, being like the American cinema blockbuster viewer, that it's going to be like, and even though sometimes that's not what I'm interested in. So I think I just wasn't anticipating it being such a film about bureaucracy and kind of where and why that was happening and set up that way. But the context helps.
Yeah. It's a super strange movie.
Yeah.
On that note, shall we move to the judgment?
Yes.
Let's do it.
As Godzillavangelists, it is our holy duty to assign each movie its proper place in the Godzilla afterlife. It could go in heaven, the highest, purgatory in the middle, or of course, hell at the bottom. And with that, Rob, please tell us, where would you judge Shin Godzilla?
Heaven. And I'm firmly putting it in there, and I might take some flack for this based on how some people in this conversation have gone, but...
Hey, what do you mean, some people?
Anywho, no, because, okay, my view of it is that it's a Godzilla movie. And you guys are theater people. You looked at it from a different way.
They're film people, Rob. I'd like to.
Excuse me. I've never been called a theater person.
The moving picture theater people. So, okay. So, anywho, it going back to it. So I've never thought of Godzilla movies as expected to be high quality, high art. So for me, I never expected all of that editing and great things. And I've watched enough Japanese movies and dramas and stuff in my life. And I had a student who was a drama guy, and his general view of Japanese movies were not good. So, but generally, I think it made Godzilla Japan's again. It brought him back. It made him a big cultural force again. And again, like a lot, it was successful. It was a Godzilla movie. He was the central of the movie. You know what? You wanted to see Godzilla. You got Godzilla. It was cool. They did that mix of, they didn't try to make him totally new and stylish. They mixed it and made it look old, but also new, which was really successful and cool, I thought. And it just made Godzilla a thing again, which I thought was amazing, because for me, Godzilla, my whole life had just been this kind of, America makes some crappy movies of him, and that's about it. When, he deserves more than that. And I think this kind of gave him that, even if it wasn't the best thing, but it gave him that. And hey, now we hear that this new Godzilla -0, at least Jim Brodecki's 2 thumbs up star of approval.
Donna Brodecki too.
Donna Brodecki too. All right. So 4 thumbs, way up over there. And if all it did was help bring Godzilla back and set the stage for potential good movies coming out with it, it deserves a heaven spot in my mind.
Hell yeah. I'll back that up and add some of my own. I'm also going to put it in heaven. As I've said, huge barrier to entry for this movie for your average American. And there are certain things that I still can't penetrate. This is my 3rd or 4th time watching it. And I'm fairly cued in to like Japanese cultural signals as far as Americans go, which is not very, but like, I guess what I'm saying is I'm kind of a weirdo, and even I have a little bit of a trouble understanding certain things.
Let's do a sit down together, walk through together next time. And anytime you have one of those questions come up, I'll be like, so this is why.
All right.
Let's clear that
for
fog.
Sure. But it is a movie made with a strong viewpoint, and I can see the coherent strategy behind that viewpoint, and I think some cool things are done with it. Flaws, for sure. It is boring, especially if you don't, if you're too lost to like get cued into the conversations, which I wouldn't blame anyone for being. And it is kind of sterile and bizarre. But if you're in the right mood, if you have the right preparation, I think it's an enjoyable, smart movie. So that's why I'll put it in heaven. Sam, you want to take the opposite side of the argument and run with it?
Sure. I mean, well, here's what's interesting. I actually have a lot of thoughts on this. For one, I haven't told you this, but I mean, maybe I have. I want to make movies. Not that anyone. I don't think all of our listeners necessarily want to see them. But I want to make movies. And I when I watch Godzilla movies, and positive or negative, I go, if I made a Godzilla movie, what would it be? And for a long time I didn't know, but I've always liked Godzilla movies, and I've always been like, man, there's something I like about this. What would I do? And what I eventually figured out was if I did it, nobody's asking, but if they did, I would want to do like a, like Armando Iannucci, like the guy who does like Veep, a creator of Veep, In the Loop, Death of Stalin, like an Iannucci or like Dr. Strangelove-esque movie about like a bunch of suits bungling the response to Godzilla, and like have it be like a satire about government and and all the things, all the pitfalls of government, but through the lens of a giant monster attacking. And that's kind of what this is, so this is the closest to the kind of Godzilla movie I've always been like, I would make one like that. And I think I'm like the ideas of Godzilla representing new, the power plant disaster and, all of that, like such great ideas. And I am so, for me, not for Sam, this is not for Sam, because to me, as me and how I understand movie storytelling, I really don't like the movie storytelling in this. I really don't like the writing. I really don't like the directing. I really don't like the editing. So it's kind of like, and that's to me, and that's, and everyone differs, and it's a wonderful art form that all types, there are all kinds of things, so
I think this is the most apologetic you've ever been.
I just, it's so hard when I'm like, I don't know, maybe I've softened
He's getting
in my old age.
sentimental in his old age.
Yeah. Joanna said it better than me. But yeah, so all this to say that's kind of where I ended. I was like, oh man, I should love this because it's so close to a similar kind of thing to like what I kind of always wanted to do. But I'm really, really put off by that stuff. And I love the ideas, but I think it's a point where we differ, Ryan and I sometimes, is I just want, the idea can be strong and I just want it to be told in an engaging, clever, thoughtful way. And I didn't feel that with this. I loved the visual effects approach. So there's a lot of good stuff here. So I think it's a purgatory. I think it's, it's Godzilla purgatory. It's not Sam purgatory, but it's Godzilla purgatory. And I think, I kind of don't, I'm not mad if people like it either, but it's not for Sam. Not for Sam.
I just,
all right, I'm glad you said that clean so we can reuse that snippet. It's funny, sometimes by being so close to something what you want and then not doing it the way you want can make you more angry. Like, that was the case with the last act of Snowpiercer and why it ruined it for me. Or even the first American Godzilla. I've talked about how it's like weirdly similar to the script outline I wrote as a 13-year-old for my ideal Godzilla movie. And maybe because it was so close, I was extra critical of it.
Oh my God.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I hear you, but at the same time, I'm also like, this is an example of like, if you just outlined this movie, I would be like, yeah, great. And it's totally in the execution of it for me.
Yeah. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself because now you've officially put it out there. So when it happens, it better be funny as hell. Okay? So I'm going to remember this conversation. I have faith in you fully. I just want to know that is the expectation that us and all podcast listeners will be storming into the theaters with.
I think there would be a lot of people, listeners to previous episodes and this episode of the show, who'd be going in ready to hate it. It'd be like, this fucking guy. No.
Fucking guy.
Let's go off.
But only if you also have me and Ryan audition again to play a newsy time guy.
Yeah, it's all news time people.
It's all news time
we all talk like that. All right, we are running a little long. So Joanna, please, what's your...
I'll give a quick review, yes. I think purgatory, low purgatory, there was a while where I was like, is this going to go in hell? I think that the added context of it, and I think, again, Japanese film made for a Japanese audience where even more of those bureaucratic ties would be maybe coming through a little stronger. But I have like so many notes of like 16 minutes in, still just talking. And then like 36 minutes in, still talking. I feel like, yeah, a lot of resonant points. I think, again, especially that line, post-war extends forever. There were a lot of resonated more in the second half. But I don't think that in order to hit those, you need to fully lose out, which I feel like is the idea that I speak to a lot. If I'm like, not, film isn't a heaven for me. I don't think you need to fully lose a few key characters having some slightly bigger storylines to like get you a little more into the story. So it doesn't just kind of like sit on this more clinical level until Godzilla comes in. I thought Godzilla looked great. I thought he looked so silly. And then I thought he looked cool. And I thought all his rave capabilities were phenomenal. And the red, all of it. But I think just thinking about how like we recently watched The Host, I feel like, again, because you are so connected and tied to that family. I mean, they hardly show, I guess they do show when they're like they show some of the silliness of the government in that film.
Oh, they do super well. Yeah,
I forgot for a bit about I forgot about like those moments when but like that film I was just like leaned in and hooked and enjoying and also taken in the whole time. So for this one, purgatory for me.
Yeah, when you stack this up next to The Host, it starts to look really bad. But on its own.
Can I just...
most
Joanna,
movies look bad when you put them next to those.
That's true. It's kind of an unfair comparison to make.
We're striving for amazingness here, okay? So we got to keep the bar high. But Rob, I
It's
hear
true.
you too on it bringing Godzilla back to Japan. Like, I think all of
Absolutely.
that keeps it in purgatory for me, for sure.
No, it's to summarize. It's like good concept, cool on the visual side of things in terms of the Godzilla side, and great on the cultural impact of it. Maybe not actually executed in the details that well. That feels like where it's kind of ended off.
Yeah, so much beer. I could just, I'm like, who wrote this script? And weren't they tired by page 60 of just how much fucking bureaucratic back and forth they were writing?
I think The Simpsons called it.
Joanna,
with
you gotta watch Evangelion.
Oh, God,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Honestly, if we're going to make that Evangelion thing, like, yeah, so much talking at desks and cutbacks to people. Just, we talk, yeah, I thought of it earlier, like, oh, yeah, I could definitely see if they did anime and they did Evangelion type stuff, I could see it. I could see it at that beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie is all allegory, no text. That's almost how I would put it. I like it regardless. So, we have a fan letter. We actually have a few, thank you, but we can always use more. If,
Oh my God,
if nothing
thanks.
else, I will read all the ones I have in the bank in the last episode we do. So, please send us more letters and reviews. This one is from Nick C. Spotify didn't let me leave a review with my rating, so I figured I would send mine here. I love the podcast and recommend it to all my buds, though none of them have the same level of obsession as I do with giant rubber suit monsters. Yet. That's in a unit. Good kaiju fan content can sometimes be rare, but I think your show has a quality that can't be matched. Keep up the great work in spreading the word of Godzilla. I know I'll be along for the whole ride. And then, P.S. Gigan fans unite. Anyone? No? Just me? All right. You're not the only Gigan fan, you know.
Wait, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
That was
that's
a great note.
wonderful.
Thank you for taking the time to write that.
Did
I
our
hope-
Gigan episode come out? Has that come out
You
yet?
mean Godzilla versus Megalon?
Oh, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Wow, here we are.
That's okay. Actually, I did a ton of work on it with Brogan today, so it's not out yet, but it should be soon with any luck.
Okay.
Um,
Gigan, it definitely came out. So he's just saying, I thought he was saying, like, Gigan fans, where's our Gigan at? But I realized it's Megalon that was missing. So he's just saying it because he likes Gigan.
he likes Gigan the monster. I don't know his feelings on Gigan the movie. Let
I
us
like-
know.
I'm with you. I like Gigan the monster.
I like that robot chicken monster. He's got a whole vibe to him.
He sure is.
I just wanted to say, like, to the listeners, we had such a fun time at the live show, and thank you so much for sending this letter in, and I hope that you have fun catching up on that silly extravaganza too once it's on the site, because I think if you enjoy the podcast, you will absolutely be like, wow, what a event to see. I don't think there are many
Yes.
like it.
I know we made jokes in the previous two episodes about how amazing and crazy and celebrity filled the show was, but to let down the curtain, we were making a joke, audience. But this time we actually have done the show,
Yeah.
and we had
We're
a blast, and it was super fun.
And there are
So,
some
yeah,
fun
it's
surprises in there for you.
And
Oh,
the
yeah.
celebrities were there. They turned up.
No, stop.
They were there.
Nicole Kidman.
Oh.
Jessica Biel. Haven't seen her in a while. She was there.
She's back. No, but yeah, the video is up on the site for purchase. Special limited time sale price of $15. So keep it there for a couple months before I bump it up. That's a bargain. And then of course we still have t-shirts and posters left. So if you want any of those, get them. They won't be there forever. Yeah, please check out the store. And thank you so much for being here, Rob. You are a great special guest today.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for having me and being so flexible with me, and glad I could finally get this one in with you guys. So next up, let's watch.
Yeah, it was fun to hear all the context.
Let's get -0 in, and then Joe, Mom and Dad, Jim and Donna Brodecki are the next guests.
Donna's opinionated, so she'd make a great guest.
Yeah.
We were joking that we should do an episode where just none of us are on, and we just have all six
The
of
parents.
our parents like talking about the movie. Just
Rob,
confused.
mom was like, "Oh, if we were ever on the podcast, would you guys be on it too, or would it be just us?" I was like, "Mom, do you not know how podcasts work?"
I don't think she does.
We're just.
I don't think she does.
I mean, I think that would be great if we just want to hand it over to them for an episode. I think that's a good idea.
It could work.
just see what happens.
We'll have to talk about it. We'll see if there's a way to make it work. The next episode, we're going to talk about the Monarch series. So we are at least attempting to be timely on something. So
I will give you.
look forward to that.
I will give you. I just looked at that. Remember our conversation earlier about fake Japanese people playing Japanese? I looked into every Japanese person there. They have a real connection. They were either born there or they have parents there or something. I looked into that because I saw the ads
There
and
you
I'm
go.
like, oh,
Finally.
okay, so could be legit. Could be. Or at least the Japanese that they might speak in there should be real native Japanese.
Yeah.
On that count, we can be sure it's quality. But yeah, I've heard good things. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys. And until then, though, audience, please share us with your friends and family, anyone who might want to hear these lovely stories and musings on the Big G. Leave comments on our YouTube videos and our social media posts and all that. And of course, biggest of all, subscribing to us on your preferred podcast provider. So please do that. And we'll see you soon. But in the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.
Squeak.
Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, is brought to you by me, Ryan Sargent, and my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schlenker. This episode was edited by Brogan Malloy. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the wonderful artists who made the movies we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at godzillavangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at GodzillaVangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.